At my mother's funeral, they told me to sit in the back. Then the lawyer stood up and read her will. Everyone froze when they heard my name. I never imagined my mother's funeral would become the day my life changed forever. It was a cloudy Thursday morning when I walked into the old church where we were to say goodbye to her. I wore a simple black dress, my dark hair tied back, trying to look composed, though inside I was trembling. I hadn't seen most of my family in years, and they made sure to remind me why. As soon as I stepped inside, my older brother David walked up to me, his expression cold as marble. "Back row," he whispered sharply. "This isn't really your place anymore." I opened my mouth to argue, but then closed it. What could I say? The whole family always treated me as the black sheep, the one who disappointed them, the one who left town years ago and barely kept in touch. So I quietly walked to the back pew and sat alone, trying to hide the sting behind my eyes. I watched from a distance as my brothers and sisters gathered at the front, heads held high, looking united in their grief, or at least in how they wanted to appear to the world. The whispers around me hurt more than I expected. Why did she even bother to come? I heard Mother cut her out completely. The service felt endless. The priest spoke of forgiveness and family, words that sounded strangely hollow given the looks I kept receiving. When the final prayer ended, everyone stood up, ready to leave for the family gathering that I knew I wouldn't really be welcome at. But then something unexpected happened. A man in a dark suit stepped forward. I recognized him instantly. Mr. Fowler, my mother's lawyer for as long as I could remember. His voice cut through the quiet chatter. "Before we all depart, as per Mrs. Anderson's wishes, I have been instructed to read her will here, in the presence of the entire family." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. This wasn't the usual way. Usually the reading happened privately, quietly, behind closed doors. But my mother had apparently wanted this to be public. I felt my heart pound harder. Deep down, I'd prepared myself for what everyone had told me, that I would get nothing. But still, some stubborn hope flickered inside. Mr. Fowler unfolded the papers with deliberate care, cleared his throat, and began. He spoke first of donations to charity, of small keepsakes left to friends. Then he moved to the family. "To my beloved eldest son David, I leave the summer house by the lake. To my daughter Elaine, the antique jewelry collection." One by one, my siblings were named, each receiving something: a property, a car, shares in the family business. Their faces, once so solemn, now betrayed small, satisfied smiles. And then Mr. Fowler paused. I felt every gaze in the room slide toward me, some curious, some openly smug, ready to watch me get nothing. And finally, Mr. Fowler continued, "To my youngest daughter, Emily." My breath caught. Emily, that was me. "I leave the house on Willow Street, and with it all contents and personal effects therein. It is my wish that she open the sealed letter placed in the top drawer of the writing desk in the study. The letter is for her eyes only." For a moment, the entire room felt frozen. I heard a faint gasp. I think it came from Elaine. David's jaw tightened, and as for me, my mind spun. Willow Street, that was her house. The family house where we grew up, the house everyone thought David would inherit. Before anyone could speak, Mr. Fowler added quietly, "These were your mother's clear instructions. The letter must not be opened by anyone else." I felt the heat of dozens of eyes boring into me. Some were full of shock. Others, barely hidden fury. For years, I had convinced myself I no longer cared what my family thought of me. But standing there, hearing my name spoken in the will, I realized how wrong I was. The old ache, The longing to belong, to be seen as worth something, it all came flooding back. David stepped forward, voice shaking with anger. There must be some mistake. The house was meant to stay in the family. Mr. Fowler shook his head. Your mother considered Emily part of the family until her last day. Part of the family. The words echoed in my mind. After everything, she still saw me that way. I left the church before anyone could stop me. Outside, the air felt sharp and cold against my skin. My hands were trembling so badly I had to sit down on the stone steps. The lawyer approached me quietly and placed a small brass key in my palm. It's yours now, he said gently. I hope the letter brings you answers. I held the small brass key so tightly in my hand that its edges dug into my skin. The weight of it felt both terrifying and comforting, as though my mother had reached across the void of death to place it there herself. As the family slowly spilled out of the church behind me, I stood and forced my legs to carry me to my car. I barely registered the stiff nods, the tight smiles, the daggers in my siblings' eyes. All I could think about was Willow Street. The drive felt surreal. The city seemed grayer, the familiar streets suddenly foreign. My heart pounded the whole way, thoughts racing. What could possibly be in that letter? Why me? When I pulled up to the old house, my breath caught in my chest. It hadn't changed much. The white paint was a little more faded, the garden a bit overgrown, but it was still home in that aching, complicated way only childhood homes can be. I stepped onto the porch, the boards creaking under my shoes, and unlocked the door. The smell hit me first. Lavender and old books. It was like stepping straight into the past. I closed the door behind me and leaned back against it, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall felt heavy with memory. The scratch on the banister I made when I was 9, the spot in the living room where I used to lie on the carpet, staring at the ceiling and dreaming of leaving this town. My footsteps echoed softly as I made my way upstairs to the study, the room my mother always kept so tidy, as if she knew it held something important. The desk stood by the window, its surface polished and bare except for a single framed photo of the two of us when I was little. She had her arm around me, smiling gently, and I looked up at her with pure adoration. I hadn't seen that photo in years. My chest tightened painfully. I opened the top drawer with shaking hands. And there it was. A thick, cream-colored envelope with my name written in my mother's careful, looping handwriting. I sat down, the letter heavy in my lap. For a moment, I just stared at my name, tracing the letters with my fingertip. Then I took a deep breath, broke the seal, and unfolded the pages inside. The letter was long, several pages, and as I began to read, my mother's voice seemed to fill the quiet room. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I imagine today was as difficult for you as it was for me to write these words. First, and above all else, I love you. I have always loved you, even when I failed to show it the way you needed. And I am so deeply sorry for those times I let you feel. There is something you deserve to know. Something I couldn't bring myself to tell you face to face. When I was a young woman, before I met your father, I fell in love with someone else. His name was Daniel. We were very young and our love was intense but complicated. When I discovered I was pregnant, I was terrified. My parents insisted I end the pregnancy, but I refused. Daniel wanted to be there for us, but he was called away on military duty, and soon after, I received word that he had died overseas. I was heartbroken. I moved on with my life, met your father, and we married. But when you were born, Emily, I knew. You were his child, not your father's. I froze. The words blurred on the page, my breath caught in my throat. Not his child. The memories flooded back. The way Dad always kept me at a distance, the way he seemed colder to me than to my siblings. I'd always blamed myself, thought I wasn't good enough. Your father agreed to raise you as his own, but he could never truly see you as his daughter. That was his choice, and it caused you pain I can never fully make up for. Emily, the house on Willow Street is yours because it is where I loved you most honestly. Every wall holds a memory of us. Bedtime stories, whispered secrets, quiet afternoons when it was just the two of us. And there is something else you should know. In the locked drawer of this desk, you'll find another envelope. Inside is information about Daniel, your real father. Letters he wrote that never reached me, and details about the family you've never met. You have a whole other family out there, Emily. If you wish, you can reach out to them. But know this. No matter what blood says, you have always been my beloved daughter. I hope this letter brings you some of the peace I couldn't give you in life. With all my love, Mother. My tears fell freely now, dripping onto the page and smudging the ink. A whole other family. And yet, the thing that meant most to me in that moment was simple. She did love me. I pressed the letter to my chest, closing my eyes, breathing in the faint smell of her perfume that still clung to the paper. Then my gaze fell to the desk again, the locked drawer. Slowly, I reached into the top drawer and found a small, silver key taped to the inside. My heart pounded as I unlocked the drawer and opened it. The drawer creaked open slowly, as though it, too, had been waiting years for this moment. Inside lay a smaller envelope, yellowed slightly with age, and tied with a faded blue ribbon. My fingers hesitated above it for just a second before I picked it up, my pulse thundering in my ears. I sat back down, the letter trembling in my grip, and gently untied the ribbon. The envelope smelled faintly of cedar and dust. I turned it over and slid out its contents. Several pages of neat, masculine handwriting, and beneath them, a single black and white photograph. I stared at the photo first. A young man in uniform, smiling softly at the camera. His eyes, clear, kind, and unmistakably familiar. My eyes. For the first time in my life, I saw where they came from. My throat tightened painfully. With shaking hands, I unfolded the first letter and began to read. My dearest Caroline, if you're reading this, it means you chose to keep our baby. I can't tell you how much that thought keeps me going, even out here in the dust and heat. I think about you both every night before I sleep. I want you to know, whatever happens to me, that I love you, and that I love our child, even if I never get the chance to meet them. My tears blurred the words. The letters were dated months before my birth. Letter after letter, his voice came through so vividly, hopeful, scared, but filled with tenderness. He wrote about baby names he liked, silly stories from camp, and always about his wish to come home and be a father. And then, the final letter. Caroline, we got the orders today. It sounds dangerous, but I can't let the others see I'm afraid. What keeps me brave is the thought of you and of the baby. If something happens to me, please tell them about me. Let them know they were loved before they were even born. Yours always, Daniel. My tears spilled freely. My chest ached with love for a man I'd never known, but who had wanted me. Really wanted me. All those years I'd believed I wasn't enough. Yet here were words that proved I had always been enough for someone. At the bottom of the drawer lay another envelope, addressed to Emily. My name in my mother's careful script. Inside were documents, an address, phone number, and the name of Daniel's sister, my aunt, Claire. My breath caught. I had family. Real, living family. I sat in that quiet study for what felt like hours. The late afternoon sun turning gold as it streamed through the window. Part of me felt paralyzed by fear. What if they didn't want to meet me? What if they had their own lives, their own families, and I was nothing but a ghost of a secret? But another part of me, stronger now, steadier, wanted to know, needed to know. For once, not to please anyone else, not to fix the past, but to find the missing pieces of who I was. I stayed in the house that night, unable to leave. Every corner whispered memories of my mother. The spot in the hallway where we used to measure my height each birthday. The windowsill where I'd sat and watched for her car when she worked late. That night, I dreamed of Daniel. I saw him as he looked in the photograph, young, warm-eyed, and smiling at me. When I woke, my pillow was damp with tears, but for the first time in a long while, my heart felt lighter. The next morning, I stood in front of my childhood mirror, holding the paper with Claire's number. My hands trembled as I dialed, the ringtone loud in the quiet kitchen. Hello? The voice on the other end was gentle, older, but kind. Hi. My name is Emily. I think I might be your niece. Daniel was my father. A pause, a sharp intake of breath. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice cracking. Emily? Is it really you? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I just found out. My mom, she left me letters. I've waited my whole life for this call, Claire said softly. Her voice broke on a quiet sob. Daniel talked about you in his letters to me. We always wondered if you'd ever find us. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't know, I choked out, until now. Oh, sweetheart, she murmured, you have cousins who can't wait to meet you, and I have stories about Daniel, so many stories, and photos and his medals. I've kept them all for you. For the first time in years, I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a sense of belonging. My whole life, I had felt like a question mark in my own family. Now, suddenly, there was a possibility of answers. We talked for over an hour, our words tumbling over each other, tentative at first, then growing more open, more real. She told me about Daniel, how he loved to play piano, his terrible jokes, how fiercely he'd loved my mother even after being sent away. Before we hung up, Claire said, Emily, your father would have been so proud of you, and I'm so proud of you too. The words I'd ached to hear my whole life, and this time, they felt real. A week later, I boarded a train heading north to meet them. The countryside blurred past my window, but inside my thoughts raced clear and sharp. I rehearsed what I might say, imagined what they might look like, and silently prepared myself for disappointment, because hope still felt dangerous. But when I stepped onto the platform, suitcase in hand, I saw a woman waiting who looked so achingly familiar it nearly knocked the breath from me. Her eyes were the same pale green as mine. Her hair, though streaked with gray, had the same wave I saw in my own reflection. Claire. She hesitated only a second before stepping forward and pulling me into a hug so fierce it startled tears out of me. Emily, she whispered, her voice muffled against my hair. Oh, Emily. I clung to her, my throat too tight to speak. I realized then that I hadn't been truly hugged, not like this, with unconditional warmth, since my mother died. She finally pulled back, her hands still holding my arms as if afraid I might vanish. Let me look at you, she said, her eyes brimming. You look so much like him, your father. Those words felt like a balm over wounds I'd carried too long. Thank you for meeting me, I whispered. Sweetheart, thank you for finding us, she replied, her voice shaking. Claire drove me to her home, a modest white house with flower boxes under the windows. Inside, it smelled like vanilla and old books. On a side table sat a framed photo of a young soldier in uniform, my father, and beside it a photo of Claire as a young woman, laughing. I traced their faces with my eyes, feeling something settle in my chest, like a puzzle piece finally fitting. Then Claire guided me into the living room where two people stood waiting, a woman in her late 30s and a teenage boy. Emily, this is my daughter, Anna, and my grandson, Jack. Anna stepped forward first, her expression nervous but open. Hi, she said softly. I know this must be overwhelming, but welcome. Jack gave me a shy, crooked grin. Mom's been telling me all week I'd be meeting my mystery cousin. I laughed, surprised by the sound of it. That's me, I guess. The awkwardness melted quicker than I dared hope. Anna brought out tea and warm scones, and soon we were talking, careful at first, then more freely. Jack asked about my life, my job, my hobbies. Claire and Anna shared stories of family gatherings, summers at the lake, Daniel's piano playing, and his terrible dance moves. I listened, hungry for every scrap. It was like discovering an entire half of myself that had been hidden behind a locked door. Later, Claire led me upstairs to a spare bedroom. On the bed sat a large wooden box. I kept everything, she said quietly, in case you ever came. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were more letters. Daniel's handwriting, instantly recognizable, and photos. Him in uniform, him at a piano, him standing beside Claire as teenagers, grinning at the camera. At the very bottom lay a small velvet box. Inside was a gold locket. I clicked it open. On one side, a tiny photo of my mother, young and radiant. On the other, a photo of Daniel. I remember when he bought that, Claire murmured behind me. He meant to give it to your mother before he shipped out. My eyes stung. I gently fastened it around my neck, feeling the weight settle against my heart. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Claire and I stayed up late in the kitchen. The only light came from the small lamp above the stove, casting everything in warm amber tones. I should have found you sooner, I whispered. I should have looked. Oh, Emily, she said softly, reaching across the table to take my hand. You couldn't know. And your mother? She must have had her reasons. I think she was trying to protect me, I said, my voice catching. But it felt like there was always this emptiness, like something missing. I know, Claire murmured. I felt it too. Losing Daniel broke something in me. But meeting you, it heals something I thought couldn't be healed. We sat there in silence, our hands joined across the table. Two women bound by love for the same man neither of us had seen in decades. In the morning, we visited the cemetery. The grass was damp with dew, and birds chirped softly in the nearby trees. Claire led me to a simple headstone engraved with Daniel's name, his birth and death years, and the words, beloved brother and son. I knelt before it, my fingertips tracing the letters. Hi, Dad, I whispered, the word foreign yet right on my tongue. I wish I'd known you, but thank you for loving me before I was even here. A breeze stirred, and for a moment, it felt like an answer. Claire placed a hand on my shoulder. He would have been so proud of you, Emily. I believed her, and for the first time, those words didn't hurt. They comforted. Back at Claire's, we spent the afternoon going through old albums. I listened to stories about Daniel's stubbornness, his quiet kindness, how he would sit beside the piano for hours, trying to perfect a single song. Anna shared memories too, how Claire had always spoken of me as somewhere out there, hoping we'd find each other. Piece by piece, a portrait of my father emerged. Not a perfect man, but a real one. And with every story, the emptiness inside me grew smaller. Before I left, Claire pressed a bundle of letters into my hand. He wrote these, just in case, she explained. They're for you. My throat tightened. Thank you, I whispered. As the train carried me home, I read them. Daniel's words bridging decades to speak directly to me. Words of love, hope, and gentle advice. The father I'd never met, yet who somehow knew me. By the time the city skyline came into view, I realized something profound. Family isn't just the people who raise us, it's also the people who never stop loving us, even across time and silence. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into a new life, one where every ordinary moment carried a quiet depth I'd never known before. At night, I'd sit by my window with a cup of tea, reading Daniel's letters one by one. They were clumsy at times, tender at others, but always honest. In them, he spoke of hope. Hope that if life separated us, his words might someday reach me. He shared stories of his childhood with Claire, of playing piano late into the night, of the fear he felt before shipping out, and the fierce love he carried for a daughter he hadn't yet held. One letter stood out. In it, he wrote, "If you're reading this, it means life kept us apart longer than I wanted. But know this, Emily, you were loved before you took your first breath. And if the world makes you doubt your worth, remember that, somewhere in its brief history, your father looked up at the stars and promised he'd love you no matter what." I wept as I read that line, grief for what we'd lost, gratitude for what I'd found. Over time, I spoke more often with Claire, Anna, and Jack. Sunday calls became routine, and slowly, awkward hesitations turned into laughter, shared jokes, and inside references. Anna sent photos of family gatherings I couldn't yet attend. Jack texted me updates about his soccer games. Claire shared recipes she and Daniel had loved as kids. One Saturday, I finally dared to play the piano again. The keys felt cool and familiar beneath my fingers, the way they had when my mother first taught me. As I played, I imagined Daniel sitting nearby, listening, encouraging, maybe even humming along. The song that had haunted my dreams all my life, the unfinished melody I could never complete, came alive that day. As if Daniel's words, Claire's stories, and my own longing had finally unlocked something. I let my fingers follow instinct rather than thought, and for the first time, the song found its true ending. Tears blurred my vision, but my hands never faltered. It was like playing with someone else's memory guiding mine. I decided to visit my mother's grave, something I hadn't done in years. I brought a single white lily and the locket Claire had given me. Standing there, I whispered, "I understand now. You were trying to protect me, even if it hurt." And though the air stayed silent, my heart felt lighter, as though forgiveness had slipped between us. Months turned into seasons. My bond with Claire deepened. Her stories filled gaps my mother had never been able to explain. At Thanksgiving, I accepted their invitation and sat at their table, a table that felt, for once, like it had been waiting for me. Anna surprised me by giving me a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate bracelet engraved with the words, "Loved before you were born." Jack, in his shy way, hugged me before he left for the evening. And Claire? She simply squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Welcome home." In the quiet of my own apartment later that night, I realized something. This wasn't just about discovering my father's story. It was about finding my own. The emptiness I'd carried for so long hadn't disappeared completely, but it had softened. I knew now that love can survive decades of silence, and family can stretch across time and distance, even across graves. Daniel never got to raise me, but his love raised something in me. The courage to seek, the strength to forgive, and the grace to belong. As I write this, I imagine someone out there might feel that same emptiness, the quiet ache of questions unanswered, of love unspoken. If you do, I hope you know, it's never too late to search. Never too late to knock on a door you're terrified won't open. Because sometimes, on the other side, there are people who've been waiting with open arms and stories that make you feel, at last, whole. Years have passed since the day I first opened Daniel's letters, but not a day goes by without feeling his quiet presence in my life. I kept the letters, worn and delicate now, in a small cedar box on my bookshelf. And every year, on his birthday, I light a single candle, play that finished melody on my piano, and whisper a simple thank you to the man I never got to meet, but who shaped my heart so deeply. Claire and I grew closer than I ever imagined possible. She told me once that in my laugh, she sometimes hears Daniel's, and in my stubbornness, she sees his spirit. It's the highest compliment I've ever received. Anna became not just my cousin, but my best friend. We traveled together, laughed until dawn, and cried over shared memories of family we'd both lost and found in each other. Jack went off to college, and at his graduation, I stood beside Claire, clapping so hard my hands hurt. And as for me, life kept moving. I got married in a small ceremony on a spring afternoon, and at the reception, I played that song, Daniel's unfinished melody, now whole. When my first child was born, I named him Daniel James, so he'd carry both the grandfather he'd never meet and the family that finally embraced me. Looking back, I see now that the truth wasn't a curse. It was a gift, a door that opened to forgiveness, to belonging, and to love that spanned across generations. If you had told me all those years ago, when I felt so alone, that my story would end not with anger, but with grace, I wouldn't have believed you. But sometimes life surprises you. Sometimes family isn't just the people who raise you, but the people whose love finds you, no matter how late. And in the end, that's the story I carry forward. A story not of what I lost, but of what I finally found. Thank you for listening. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you are never too late to discover where you truly belong.